Hello, I'm Ravenscraft9. I'm your host, the proprietor here at Buckwheat Farms and Magic Emporium. What are we? Who are we? Well, there will be a link in the comments section below that you can check out. It'll tell you about who we are and what we are. But tonight, at this time, I've come for a totally different purpose. I struggled with this. See, I wanted to make tonight a video all about our website and all about sharing about permaculture and all those things, voluntarism and magic. And time and time again, I was just drawn back to share from your heart your story, that someone needs to hear your story, because my story, just like many other stories, is one of finding my way out of the heaping pile of crap that was the identities that others had hung upon me, or I'd allowed to hang upon myself because of their mindset, their beliefs. And you know, this whole thing, the theme of tonight's program, as you know, is all it takes is love. All you need is love, self-love. You know, everybody likes to quote, or those in the church like to quote, love your neighbor, love your neighbor, love your neighbor. And they miss out on the second part, is as you love yourself. And that's, you know, not a tenet that's solely Christian in nature. And almost all major faiths, as I always say, if you need a faith to be a decent person, then you've probably got some issues anyway. But all the basic faith tenets have some form of this concept of loving others as you love yourself, of the golden rule, of doing unto others, of that which you would have others do to you, that you do to them, basically, the yin and yang kind of thing going on. So that, but what we fail to see in that is that concept of self-love, that we've got to first love ourselves. Part of my journey and my walk to where I am now, and I consider myself kind of a self-trained wizard. I practice magic, which, you know, I just define as using my will to change my reality. And I'll do an episode later on how everything we do is actually magic. That magic is the natural state of man, as is anarchy. But that, again, that's another program. I'll try to keep the rabbit trails to a minimum. But we're back to these false images, these false ideals that are placed upon us. For me, it was, you know, I was the firstborn. My mother and father, my father was 20 years old when I was born. My mother 19. Not much prospects with it, you know, a baby, but things looked pretty good. But then suddenly, my mom's popping out number 2 2 years later, and then number 3 17 months after number 2. And so here I am, a little over 3 years old, and kind of made to fend for myself, not in any intentional sort of way, but because these things come from someone I love and trusted to provide for my greatest good, just to be seeking out my highest good. But they were operating as they were kids. They were kids with kids. And so I don't want to say this as make this to seem like I'm parent bashing or anything like that, because again, all of these situations, as understanding of quantum physics, we understand that this is really, we've created this from our own mind. So all of those things I created in order to find my way through and find my path. And again, I don't want to get into that rabbit trail either, because tonight I want to focus on self-love and how we get there. And we're taught to identify in so many ways, and so much of that comes from negative reinforcement we receive, as a kid. Take, for example, my wife. My wife had an episode where she caught her arm, and this will, yes, we're boomers. She caught her arm in an old washing machine. It's a hand washing machine, and she was, I think she said 4 or 5 years old, and you would have to have a stick, and you would push the clothes through the wringer as the handle was turned, and so it would dry the clothes out. And she was pushing the stick through, and her hand went through, and her arm got caught in, and did some pretty significant damage to her arm. And that night, she just set an intention that her arm be healed. And the thing is instead of chalking that up to her intention, everyone, those she trusted most, discounted it and said, "Oh, it must not have been as bad as we originally thought." Well, there it is, right away. Any concept or thought of any possibility of anything beyond what we know is wrong. And yeah, I don't want to go there yet. That's a bridge too far right now. So we'll wait. We'll pull back. But so much of that for me, trying to please my father. My father was and again, not parent bashing, just observing. And that's one of the things that coming to a place of true self-love allows me to observe it and not judge it, not to say this was a good thing or this was a bad thing. It just was a thing. And even my responses and my reactions, and this is the most important part of being able to forgive myself and move on and say, my reactions, my responses were neither right nor wrong. I just observed them, and then I can drop them so simply. That's why self-love is so important. So how do we get there? How do we recognize those things? What is it? And so we got to recognize that it's every aspect of our society, every aspect of our lives that tends to push us away from self-love. We're taught to identify in groups, not as individuals. Politically, you're either for the red team or for the blue team. What college team do you root for? Who are you? Even as babies, there's years ago I studied some information, studied John and Paula Sanford on subliminal, what does it call it, in vitro wounding, where the fetus can be wounded, and again, it's the chemicals that are produced in an emotion. The baby the mother has, the baby receives those chemicals, and so fear in the mother will induce fear in the child. And there we have where I wanted to go with this. So is about fear, because when we're talking about love and self-love, we've got to understand there's another scripture, if you want to call it. And forgive me if this offends anyone. My background is I have a master's in theology. I was a pastor at one time. My background is from a Judeo-Christian understanding. My wife and I have had the honor of sitting at a table with one of the prominent rabbis in the Hasidic community and listening to his words of wisdom. So that's where our background is from. And even though now I don't recognize any ism as the only way, because that's part of what we do at Buckwheat Farms, is we recognize that your path is your path, that whatever works for you works for you, whatever gets you there gets you there. And so oh my God, did I lose it? There's so many thoughts running through here. But anyway, that's my background, and that's where I come from. So there are a lot of references, but I've studied other numerology. Of course, chaos magic is where I dwell now in the realm of the psychonauts, and I've sat in on some high magic. Started out with some high magic, studying as an adept, and then ventured off into chaos magic just because I'm kind of a rebel that way. But again, that's my path, not your path. So when I bring up these references, it's just a point of reference. I don't believe that if you don't believe Jesus was the only Son of God, that you'll go to hell and burn eternally and all that rubbish. No. But there's words of wisdom and everything, because words carry meaning, words carry ideas, words carry intent, and what it is the idea, is the religious and governmental authorities that twist and turn those ideas. Let's give an example: the Tower of Babel. Here we are at the Tower of Babel, and it says, of course, in the Bible, that the Lord says, if they, being of one mind, can do all this, then nothing will be impossible to them. So let's go down and confound their language. Let's put them at odds with one another. And let me tell you this: the powers, those that wish to rule others, set about an understanding that if we pit them one against one another, then we can control them. But once they understand that they are, and this is something you'll hear me say throughout the videos in the coming days and weeks, is we are just individuated expressions of a unified field of energy, and as such we share so much, but also we need for each of us to be an individuated expression. There doesn't need to be a duplicate expression. A duplicate expression makes one unnecessary, and I use this analogy with my grandkids, that how many planes can go through a point, and anyone who has studied or just think about it, it's an infinite number of planes that can go through a point. So there's an infinite number of perceptions that we can have, and so each individuated expression is a perception is a point of view, is a facet. Uh, and that's what we're here to do, is to express fully and see and to share that information into the mainframe, so to speak, so that we can all download it and all understand it. It's the way colors, the concept of color spread. Oh gosh, that's something for another day as well. So let's get back to self-love. This whole idea of keeping us at odds with one another makes us identify in groups. And as we identify in groups, we lose our individuality. We become homogenous, and we ourselves begin to blend in, and we try to fit in, and we try to make and mold and twist ourselves until we lose complete and utter understanding of who we really are. And that's where I was in danger of finding myself. Until about 4 years ago, I'd been studying the writings of Marcus Aurelius, the Epicureanism, Stoicism, and a friend of mine suggested I begin meditation. I began meditating, and some of the meditation things, one of the meditation pages linked me to a page on magic, and the door was opened, and I stepped through. And again, this is my path; it doesn't have to be yours. I had mentors come across my path, studied the Kabbalion. One of the things in the Kabbalion, the alchemy, one of the principles is that when the student is ready, the teacher arises. And so I'm hoping that, no, I'm not hoping, I'm trusting and knowing that, not that I consider myself a teacher, just a guy sharing. And that gets me back to the point. I know I ramble, but eat the chicken, spit out the bones. Because I want to get back to the point of self-love. The point of casting off those other identities, and how that happened about, how that comes about. In meditation, one of the things that, one of the methods that I use, and it's common, this is not, some thesis on meditation. If you want to know about meditation, there are plenty of websites about meditation. This is my story. These are my words. This is my intent that has a power, and it's going forth, and there's someone that it's meant to touch. And even if it's only one, then that's okay. But I know it's more. So this thing of whose thought is that? And as the thoughts come up, whose thought is that? And for me, I began to say, dang, these are things that I wouldn't say or think about my worst enemy, and I'm telling myself these things. And then I began to ask, what about this thought of hating this other person because of what political party they assign themselves to, and what beliefs they hold, and what even they do, as long as they're not inflicting injury, harm upon me. Why? Whose idea was that? If you look at babies don't look at another baby and see an adversary. They see a reflection of themselves. And see, that's what the powers that be, those that confuse us like the Tower of Babel, want us to be. They want us to be at odds with one another. To come from a mindset of lack that says the only reason that others have something is because they've taken it. from me that there's only so much in this world, and I've got to grab mine. That I have got to trample upon my brother to get to mine. And we have bits and bouts of altruism in our lives, but even that's self-driven. Probably 99% of the altruistic things. I won't blanket it, but it exists. Altruism for personal gain, for personal satisfaction, to earn your way into heaven. If you're watching The Good Place, to earn your way into the good place, to get points. But that's not the reason. See, that's not true. No, I guess whatever. True altruism, you can judge that for yourself. I'm not here to say what's true or what's false. I'm here to tell you about my path and my story. So I began to look at those things, and I said, I wouldn't tell myself those things, and we wouldn't do those things. And I went through a period of, as you see them, and they call this the dark night of the soul, as you see these things come up in you, and you say, gosh, that's pretty bad. And you go through guilt, and you let go of the guilt, and on and on and on, until finally you come to this place where you say, I've got to love myself. I've got to forgive myself. I've got to release myself. Because the thing is, see, we come from this mentality of lack. And so we approach every one of our relationships from a point of need, because they've got something I want. Sometimes it's a physical need. Sometimes that's an emotional need. Sometimes we think it's a spiritual need, but they've got something I want, and the only way that I can get it is to take it. And see, that's doing things from the outside in. My grandmother used to take me fishing, and we would fish, and we would look for catawba worms, or worms that grow on catawba trees. And she would take a turning stick, and she would always turn the worms inside out before we put them on the hook, because it made them more attractive to the fish. And that's kind of what we need to do. We need to turn our point of view inside out. Because what I want to tell you is that it is impossible for you to love your neighbor. It's impossible for you to heal another. It's impossible for you to truly be the light that you desire to be until you believe it of yourself, until you see yourself in that way. See, we always want to say, Namaste, the divinity in me. We say that quietly. Recognizes the divinity in you, we say boldly. We're taught that we shouldn't call ourselves divine, but yet denying it denies the very DNA that runs through us. Self-love. It's where it starts. We're taught more on it this week. Because what we're preparing for, if you're here through this time, you know what I'm about to say. The paradigm shift. We're moving into a new paradigm. A paradigm where we're going to move from that point of coming into relationships, approaching each other from a place of need and a place of lack, to approaching each other from a place of abundance, a place of overflow, where we don't judge by how much we've accumulated, but we judge ourselves. We count our wealth in terms of how much we've given. Where generosity becomes the norm, so that we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Because unless that pure well of love is flowing through us, all the water, if we put the rust of of our damage to ourselves in there. That's what is going to come out. See, the thing is, again, if you wouldn't say it about them, why are you saying it about yourself? If you're listening to this video, you know that you've been called to something greater. But all those things that your parents or teachers or grandparents or coaches or friends, all those things you told yourself about yourself, those lies that you've used to identify yourself have limited you. And every time you think, man, I know there's something out there. I know there's something bigger. I know there's magic somewhere. That sensor came up and shut you down. We're moving into a new paradigm. We're moving into the age of Aquarius. You know, if you kept up with anything in astronomy or astrology, you know about the conjunction, the lining up of the planets. The 21st and 22nd. Tonight is the first night of the new moon, the 15th. 7 days counting down. 7 is the number of completion. I truly believe we're coming to a point of leveling up. And I want to help as many of you as I can prepare yourself for it, because it's going to be a drastic change for a lot of us. Already I'm finding ideals, ideologies, beliefs of mine being challenged that I'm having to set aside and say, this doesn't serve me anymore. And we've entered that phase of relinquishing and letting go and turning things loose. It's been that kind of year where all of the old ways have passed away, are passing away. Our old idols are being cast down. It seems like a scary time. But don't be afraid, because, again, quoting from that book, there is no fear in love. Because love carries with it the fear of punishment. Perfect love casts out all fear. Perfect love, the love of yourself, says, there's no punishment for me. That I am what I am. I know what I'm called to be. See, it's those fears, those traumas, those pains that cause us to get off track, that cause us to veer away from our path, that cause us to lose sight of the light that we are. Our purpose at Buckwheat Farms and Magic Emporium is to be placeholders for you, to be witnesses, to help you, to share not only our story, but your story. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, whatever. I don't know how all that stuff works. I'm new to this. Boomer showing again. I'm just doing what I've been called to do. Putting my heart out there. And trusting. Trust Him. Until next time, be who you are. Let the world bear the weight of it.